You've probably been told you're too sensitive, too intense, that you read too much into things. But what if none of that was true? What if you were just wired differently to pick up on signals most people's brains quietly filter out? There's actual neuroscience behind why certain people notice what others miss. And once you understand it, you'll stop apologizing for the way your mind works. If that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Because what's happening in your brain isn't random, it isn't luck, and it definitely isn't weird, even if it's made you feel that way your whole life. Section 1. What noticing actually is. Most people move through the world on autopilot, and that's not an insult. It's neuroscience. The human brain processes roughly 11 million bits of information per second, but our conscious mind can only handle about 50. So the brain builds shortcuts. It filters. It decides what's worth your attention and quietly discards the rest. For most people, that filter is heavily shaped by social consensus. What everyone else is paying attention to becomes what you pay attention to. Sports scores, celebrity drama, whatever's trending. The brain essentially outsources its attention to the crowd. But some people's filters work differently. Researchers studying what's called perceptual sensitivity have found that certain individuals have a nervous system that is genuinely more responsive to subtle stimuli. Faint sounds, micro-expressions, slight changes in atmosphere, inconsistencies in a story. Their threshold for "that's worth noticing" is simply lower than average. This isn't a superpower, it's a neurological trait, and it comes with a very specific set of experiences that most people around you will never fully understand. Section 2. The science behind it. In the 1990s, psychologist Dr. Elaine Aron introduced the concept of the highly sensitive person, or HSP. Her research found that roughly 15 to 20% of the population has a nervous system that processes sensory and emotional information more deeply than the norm. But here's what often gets missed in the popular conversation about sensitivity. This isn't just about being emotionally affected by things, it's about depth of processing. Brain imaging studies show that highly sensitive individuals show significantly more activation in areas of the brain associated with awareness, empathy, and integration of complex information, particularly the insular and the mirror neuron system. In plain terms, their brains are doing more work with the same input. They're not just seeing what you see, they're cross-referencing it, connecting it to past patterns, running it through emotional and logical filters simultaneously. By the time a highly sensitive person has finished processing a single conversation, they've extracted layers of meaning that most people didn't even know were there. And this isn't limited to emotional sensitivity. Research published in Brain and Behavior found that sensory processing sensitivity correlates with stronger performance on tasks requiring detection of subtle visual and auditory differences. These people literally perceive the world in higher resolution. Section 3. Why it can feel like a burden. Now, if you're nodding along, you probably also know the other side of this. Noticing everything is exhausting when your brain is constantly picking up signals that others filter out. The tension in a room before anyone said a word, the slight hesitation in someone's voice, the detail in a story that doesn't quite line up. You don't get to switch off. The input keeps coming. This is why people with high perceptual sensitivity often feel overstimulated in environments that others find perfectly comfortable. Loud restaurants, open-plan offices, crowded social events. It's not that they're fragile, it's that their nervous system is processing significantly more data than the person standing next to them. And there's a social cost too. When you notice things others don't, you often have two choices. Say something and risk being seen as intense, overthinking, or difficult. Or stay quiet and carry the weight of what you've observed alone. Most people who think this way have learned over years to edit themselves, to hold back, to soften what they see so it doesn't make others uncomfortable. That habit of self-editing, it starts early, and it leaves a mark. Section 4. The connection to unconventional thinking. Here's where it gets really interesting. People who notice what others miss tend to be the same people who don't follow the crowd in other ways either. They're less likely to accept a popular opinion just because it's popular. They're more likely to question a system that everyone else has accepted as normal. They often have unusual taste in music, in ideas, in the kind of conversations they find worth having. This isn't coincidence. It's the same underlying trait expressing itself in different domains. When your brain is wired to detect what's beneath the surface, you apply that to everything, including culture, including social norms, including the stories you're told about how the world works. A 2021 study found that individuals high in sensory processing sensitivity scored significantly higher in openness to experience, one of the core personality traits associated with creativity, intellectual curiosity, and comfort with complexity. They don't just notice more, they question more. And that questioning, while it can make life feel lonely at times, is also the source of some of the most original thinking in any room. Section 5. The loneliness nobody talks about. Let's be honest about something. One of the most common experiences for people who think this way is a quiet, persistent sense of not quite fitting in. Not because they're antisocial, not because they don't care about people. Often they care deeply, but because the gap between how they experience the world and how most people around them experience it can feel enormous. You've sat in conversations where everyone's laughing at something that feels hollow to you. You've watched people miss something obvious and wondered if you're the one who's got it wrong. You've felt the particular loneliness of seeing something clearly and having no one to say it to. Psychologists who study this describe it as existential isolation. Not loneliness in the social sense, but the deeper experience of feeling that your inner world doesn't map neatly onto the world around you. And here's what's important to understand. That feeling is not evidence that something is wrong with you. It's evidence that you're processing reality differently. And different, in this case, has real value, even when the world hasn't told you that yet. Section 6. The quiet strength in it. The people who built things that mattered, who caught the flaw in the plan before it became a disaster, who read the room when everyone else was oblivious, who saw the pattern in the data that changed the outcome, they were usually the ones who noticed what others missed. This trait, when understood and owned rather than suppressed, becomes one of the most powerful things a person can bring to any situation. Not because it makes you better than anyone else, but because the world genuinely needs people who are paying attention at a different level, who won't just go along with the consensus because it's easier, who trust what they observe even when no one else sees it yet. The goal isn't to become less sensitive to the world. The goal is to stop apologising for how clearly you see it. If this resonated with you, it's probably because you've spent a long time wondering why your experience of the world feels so different from the people around you. Now you have part of the answer. Your brain isn't broken. It isn't too much. It's running a more complex program. And that comes with real costs and real gifts. If you want to go deeper on the psychology of people who think differently, my last video on the psychology of people who've been through too much covers a lot of the same territory from a different angle. And the comments section on that one is full of people who finally felt seen. Subscribe if you want more of this, and I'll see you in the next one.